Cool. Welcome everyone. Looks like we got folks logging in now. We'll give everybody a minute or two to get situated, grab a cup of coffee, a beer, whatever you need today to get you through a Thursday, and we'll get things moving. But excited to see everybody jumping on. A lot of familiar faces that we see in there too. So, Jeff, I'm pumped, man. This is gonna be a good episode. I know. Judging just by the registration list, we've had a lot of people excited about sitting around the big boy table. So.
I'm pumped for this. I was just thinking Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, just sitting here waiting till Thursday is happening. Now that we're
I know,
here,
right?
I'm gonna be sad about tomorrow.
Hey, tomorrow is Friday. We were joking around with a customer earlier today, like get as much as you can done by around noon Eastern time because 9 for you because that's going to be early in the morning. But basketball games start tomorrow for March Madness, and
Oh
the
yeah.
minute that happens, people for some reason emails don't go out nearly as fast. So you don't get as much done. It's weird.
It's like it's this slowing effect around email communication,
Yep.
calls, especially during Michigan and UCLA games. I definitely might be a little slower than usual.
It's weird that way, right? So funny. Cool. Rick, how's it going? Hi. All right. Let's kick it off, man. We got a bunch of folks in. I know a couple other folks are still logging in, but man, we got a lot to talk about, so we'll get moving. So, Jeff, excited to have you here, man. Another episode of shOPS Talk where we bring some of the best industry experts in the game over from our community onto the episode. We're going to talk all things operations, and I think today more than anything, excited about how do we get into this operational leadership capacity. But first things first. So excited to have everybody from an attendee perspective. Always have to thank our sponsors, Salesforce, for allowing us to partner with our community to really help elevate more operations folks. But we're excited as always. Jeff, I'll let you introduce yourself, but take it away. Tell everybody who you are and why we're here to talk about.
Yeah, I appreciate that. If everyone's wondering why the Mario Brothers background, I always remember when you're leveling up and passing a level, you always jump and try to hit the top of that flag. Sometimes you don't always get there, but it doesn't mean that you don't pass the level. So I'm the head of revenue operations at a venture-backed company called UpKeep in Los Angeles. We sell to the maintenance and reliability space. My particular role is leading a team of go-to-market operations professionals supporting 3 core departments. That's marketing, sales, and customer success. Also, sales enablement roles under our team as well. Prior to coming to UpKeep, I've had a variety of roles. I think like most operations folks you've interviewed, we've tumbled into the role itself. Was in consulting, sales, finance, eventually in finance supporting sales over at Google, and learned the craft of cutting territories, quotas, um, customer acquisition, cost unit economics, and then eventually layering on all the technology. And I've been at startups for the last 7 years, primarily focused on that 10 to $100 million journey.
I love it. You and for everyone here that I'm sure is attending because they follow Jeff on LinkedIn, I will always tell them this, but I'll tell them very loud today. Thank you for all the content and being a thought leader behind this. Obviously, your background has given you so much experience and exposure to how to run revenue operations right. But like I said, I know a lot of folks are here because we get to see you in action every day, dropping knowledge on us left and right. So thanks for being the the RevOps guru and the person out there screaming it from the top of a mountain. So.
For sure.
Excited to get things kicked off. One thing we always do, we always like participation from the audience. So we keep this very informal, relaxed. If you have a question, pop it in the Q&A. We always do like to kick off a poll, which I will launch now. Obviously, we talk about this from a leadership perspective, but we want to hear from the crowd, folks that are here right now. Are you a RevOps leader? Yes, no, would like to be. We will very much talk about the would like to be and how to get there in a second. But we always like to see and hear who's in the audience at what level of their operations world. So what's fun for me, I know y'all get to see this on the attendee side. We see these responses, 13 people so far, a healthy mix. Yes, 30% yes, 30% no, and 50% in this group right now would like to be in operations leadership. So this is perfect. We'll kick it off, Jeff, because I really think there's a lot of different ways to start to approach how to be a leader in the RevOps space. But I think more importantly, let's figure out for a company themselves, if we think about it from a company perspective, when should a company actually start a RevOps role in leadership? When is the right time for that company? Like I said, your experience has afforded you a lot of ways to look at it, but what do you think? When should a company really start their RevOps leadership role?
Personally, I think as soon as possible, but it doesn't always work out that way, right? So, particularly at the startup phase where companies are really solving for product market fit, it's too premature at that point to bring in any sort of go-to-market operator. And depending on your business motion, right? Like you want to meet your buyers where they are. So if you're in a B2C space, you're probably going to lean much more towards marketing operations skill sets. If you're product led and you're really getting those free trial motions, you might have some sales touch, you may not. So again, you're probably going to lean much towards more of the top of funnel operations. But if you're like me in the B2B, software and sales space, and you're going to have to interact with a sales rep or a sales development rep at some point. And so what you do is typically you're building up these departmental skills. So depending on your buying motion and where your buyers are, you're probably going to lean on hiring a marketing ops or a sales ops professional. And let's be honest, RevOps is kind of a new terminology that we've labeled on an old craft. But it is new in some ways as well, because folks are thinking about revenue as the byproduct of delivering great value for customers. And the way to do that is aligning all of the internal pieces of the company. And so what you're typically looking at is a few telltale signs of when to bring in a revenue operator, and you're really focusing on alignment. That is information asymmetry, and it's not flowing between these different groups. So you have these substantial silos within the company, and you're typically going to build out your revenue operations function as kind of that great alignment spokesperson within the company. And there's a lot of different organizational structures you could explore. It's another topic to go down as well. But typically, you're going to have these departmental skill sets brought in first. And then what I typically see is someone layering on afterwards, bringing in that RevOps leader.
I love that. So, the coolest thing that I took away and just listening so closely, and I'm sure everybody else took this away, you didn't throw a number out. I think too often when companies are trying to grow and they hit these benchmarks, it's like, cool, we have 50 people. We need to go get operations. Awesome. Now we have 150 headcount. Now we need an operations leader. It's so tough to put a linear example to that. Sure, is benchmarking data perfect? And as ops nerds, we love some good analysis and benchmarking data. But I think so often what you said, where it comes to how your business is operating, have you hit these certain milestones subjectively and objectively? And are you starting to understand how these components work with your business? That's the right time. And I always like to think that it's not always, like I said, it's not always a number. It's like, cool, well, we hit a million in recurring revenue, or sweet, we now have 5 million, or we have 50 employees. Like those are all sometimes directional indicators, but they're not always like a line in the sand, like sweet, now I got to go hire somebody in RevOps. So I absolutely love that. So I think when we think about, we've answered the question of when a company thinks about, bringing in leadership in the operation side. I think what's really cool, we see this, sometimes a 50-50 coin flip. Do you promote from within to find that? Or is that something you go out and hire for? And I think when we go into this next question of it is, how do you go about negotiating how to change your role? So I think a lot of folks they're here, and we saw this by the poll results, right? About 50 folks, or 50% of people in here are saying, yes, I want to be there. So we'll answer that question directly for them. When we think about negotiating that revenue operations manager or sales ops manager to director of RevOps or director or VP, whatever your title structure is for your company, how do you go about talking about that strategic move, and how do you really negotiate your change for that role?
That's a great question, because I was a team of one for several years, and a team of one, your metric for success is somewhat different from revenue leader. As a team of one, you're really focused on, am I delivering value at the project level, under budget, under time, and am I delivering all the tactical things that are important? But at the end of the day, just shifting from, there are different levels. What I posted before, you start off as this executor, right? And the goal of the executor is to take care of home base, take care of the tackling and blocking. Lead routing has to work at all times. Accounts and data governance has to work at all times. And so these things about, how do you move from there to the advisor, which is the second level? So that first level is the executor, and to exit there is like moving through stages. You have to become what I consider a worry-free service. There are no questions around the fidelity of your data or if the systems are buggy or whatnot. You get to the point where you can build in that fidelity. That second level is the advisor. And I like to think about it as, more than just building a report or building a dashboard. You actually take the time to ask, so what? Why does this matter? What's the impact, and communicate to it? We often try to manage the business through metrics, but metrics-based management often ends up becoming this exercise. And yes, that's a North Star. So how do we do that? And so what you want to answer instead is start coming up with how to do that. And that's where you come up with your insights and actionable recommendations. An old playbook that I learned as a consultant was your slide should have 3 bullets. And then at the very end, you should come up with risk and opportunities. And then the last slide should be, next steps. It's like, well, okay, that sounds very canned, but it actually made a lot of sense. So you're walking the narrative. And the last thing is becoming a partner. And I think that's the highest level, like Zen, where you have a seat at the table. And besides just providing insights and actionable recommendations, you're actually looking at holistic trends in the industry. Are you being subsumed by competitors? Is the share of the market growing or shrinking? What does that foretell for the entire stack? So, for example, last year was an opportunity for those with strong balance sheets. You actually probably saw your cost per keyword go down on your top of funnel, and then all of a sudden it started ramping back up towards the back half of the year. And this happens to a lot of industries. And so folks started thinking, okay, do I outspend everyone? How am I going to do this? Because we just adjusted to this new normal. Instead, people start thinking ahead. As soon as keyword costs are going up, let's start developing that content hub strategy. And marketing ops had to start thinking about, okay, how are we going to segment? How are we going to route these leads? And you have to start looking at ahead. So those 3 levels, executor, advisor, and partner, is how you're really going to drive towards where you can get there. So that's one roadmap, and then obviously there's the tactical pieces of how to get there.
I love that. And the things I take so much away from that, and you and I've talked about this so often, as you grow in this role, so much of your pie chart, if you think of your pie chart of the day, even if you go down to like the executor versus the advisor side, if you just put those 2 wedges in there, so often we start to see early in our careers, we're so tactical and we're so execution heavy. Like, let's go remove this roadblock. Let's go build that report. Let's go build this validation rule. We'll get real nerdy on the Salesforce side. But then you start to realize as you become that partner and advisor, your pie chart starts to shift because you're not as tactical. You're very much starting to be the strategic partner in the business. And I think you'll know, it's goofy to say you'll know when you know, like when you get pegged or get tapped to be like, yes, I need you to start thinking strategically for that, is the absolute appropriate time where you get to start saying, cool, if I get to start thinking strategic, how do we build our functionality, our group, our titles, more people in the group to those right roles? Because I think more than anything, it has to be a timing thing. I think you have to be with the company and making sure that that you're really, moving the ball forward. If you want a promotion or if you want that next title, like, earn it. And it's never just given. It's never something easy or free. You have to actually go and earn it. And by becoming that partner, you very much get to do that. So we're going to go a little, not too far off course, but I will say we do have a question from the audience. So, one thing from an anonymous attendee, how should someone move from system ops leader, so Salesforce, to the broader RevOps leader? That's a phenomenal question. I got some opinions, but Jeff, what do you think?
So, the best thing about, folks are looking for guidance on how to drive their decision-making. And the best thing about working with marketers, sellers, and folks in customer experience is that they have incredible business intuition. And oftentimes what I'll find is when I'm doing an analysis, my insights are actually really on course with a lot of that intuition. But every once in a while, and hopefully more often than not, there are those gotchas. And the gotchas are in those, those little segmentations or those time series analyses, or things that folks really can't notice. The great thing about becoming, systems admin is that you're kind of the person who owns the keys to all the data in there. And so if you have the opportunity to, just start trialing and surfacing a few insights here and there, like, hey, I'm noticing a couple of these patterns. And so when you're in ops, there's typically 2 paths to get into ops. There's the accidental path, which is the one I did, where you have the business acumen, right? Because I was in sales before and finance, and so I got to study the business from outside, and then I layered on all the technology later, so the Salesforce side and everything along those lines. And then there are other folks who come in from the technical route, and then you're layering on the business acumen. So from whichever corner of the earth you're coming from, there's the path for you. And so what I would suggest is, really working with one or two stakeholders that are really lacking insight, and you can see that they're operating based on gut and buzz. And one of the things you can do there is really start validating some of their theories and potentially even negating some of their hypotheses by looking at the data. That would be a quick win for anybody out there. And then once you've started to become this well of information and insights, and you feel confident that you can drive recommendations. But even before that, you're gonna see this effect. Folks are gonna come to you and say, "Hey, I noticed that you have some great insight and things that I didn't really notice before." You'll actually start getting this crowd outside of your window. So
No,
that's what happened
you're
to me
spot on.
in the early days.
Yeah. Well, I think the one thing, and great question. Thank y'all for asking that, and Jeff, obviously for answering. I think what I always find unique, and this was pretty almost predictable to a certain degree, but very normal through my career with this, was you get in, you start owning all these systems, and again, it's your keys to the castle, right? People know that, and it doesn't surprise me to hear it from any of our customers or friends in the community that say, yeah, I got pulled in to really help do the last set of our board deck data. Like they needed all of our trends, all of the KPIs we have, and I own those. And if there's anything you get out of that, it's such a sense of accomplishment. Like, man, all my hard work of making sure that we track these things the right way. What are our conversion rates? How's this rep doing? Are we going after this vertical now? What territory is performing best? You built all that, and to be rewarded by having an executive ask like, hey, I need your help making sure that we can show this story the right way to our board is one of the best feelings. I think the other thing I would add on to this, and you said this too, find those opportunities to be strategic, because as a systems person, you're always going to be making sure ticket counts low, things are up and running, there's no breakages. But find that one or two times a week where you see all these things, you get to go to your leadership and just be suggestive and say, hey, I was running through a lot of these things and I noticed these three things. Here's what I would say. Can we talk about how we can strategically implement something? And lead by example first. And of course, it'll pay itself off as you continue to grow in your career. But it's
Yeah,
it's so
one
important.
tactic that I think is interesting. A peer of mine was going through this recently, which was they started delivering these metrics, and then what ended up happening was folks started asking for more, but my friend, my peer, he couldn't deliver the results because he was just spending so much time in the weeds. And so we started crafting a game plan for him, which is, let's start measuring it's measuring your time and how you're spending it, and then keeping categories of what kind of tickets or projects you're battling, and eventually started becoming this measurable impact that we could carve out these insights, but there has to be a trade-off. Some of these things have to give. In order to do that, we have to increase capacity. And here are some suggestions to increase capacity. We either automate the work, we drop it completely in terms of scope, or we augment the investment in a number of categories, whether that's people, process, or systems.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're spot on. I think you kind of zoom out of a lot of that, and there's only so many hours in the day that you can get some stuff done. And I think historically, operations folks, myself included, had a really hard time articulating how much time that spent to go build these things, especially from a system side. Anybody that knows me, and Jeff and I riff on this all the time, when you're owning technology like this, like the Salesforce, the Marketos of the world, the insert name here of all the go-to-market tech, that is a time-consuming job, and it's really hard sometimes to say, hey team, it took me 12 hours to go build this one thing. But you do yourself a favor, keep a lot of check marks on it, keep time check yourself on all of it, because that's how you build that use case back to the business to actually continue to build your teams. So this is a really fun question, and I love this because we all know Jeff because he drops knowledge on us every day in LinkedIn, and you have such a great brand behind RevOps. When we think of how an ops team can work to transform their own brand to earn that seat at the table, I love this question because it's very open, but it's there is a whole brand to this, and there's a whole Mitchell on our team, our sales engineer. He says this all the time. When you're in RevOps, which he was running RevOps before joining us, he was like, if you're not building enough trust and collaboration with the rest of the business, your brand is what matters the most, because if something breaks, they're going to point the finger at you. But when you think about it from your team perspective of building a RevOps brand within the business, what is it that people should be thinking about so they can earn that seat at the table?
So one of the most interesting things within RevOps is you can think of your org or your role as internal product managers with developing a product for your customers. And those are your internal stakeholders, whether it's your marketing organization, your sales organization. And there's almost a miniature NPS that could happen, right? You have these net promoters in the business who go to you because they know that you're going to deliver on whatever level of inquiry that, whether it's a tactical support item or a huge project or some sort of input into some sort of important model or a strategic conversation that needs insights from the data. And so one of the things that you can do to build a credible brand is really viewing your organization as product managers to the rest of the organization. And there's a lot of playbooks that are out there from product management, which is one, really canvassing the organization for user stories. And it's really a simple 3-column exercise. What are you doing currently? What would you like to do? And what's the solution? And then really building out for every single important project, having some structure around it so that everyone is involved, whether you're using the DAISY framework, you're a driver, approver, contributor, or informed. You're bringing those playbooks to fruition. Second is project management techniques. So, classifying your support tickets. To me, it's your internal customer support. In my organization, we have P1s, which are your highest priority, P2s and P3s. We go through an exercise where we're calibrating how much time it's going to take so that we can appropriately build out our SLAs. And the organization comes to us because they know that their issue is going to be heard and hopefully responded to with an SLA. And it gives me an opportunity to work with my team to make sure that we set our own internal benchmarks around, okay, what's our delivery standard? What's the level of quality for any net new projects? And then how do we make sure that we work with others so that we can understand and listen to the rest of the business so that we can innovate internally, build out some maybe new kick-ass lead routing. Maybe we're doing something around lead scoring and maximizing off our internal database, whether it's a sales process and really understanding, where are deals getting stuck in our sales process and what are the data points that we're missing? And then how do we calibrate and figure out how do we surface those insights? Those are really interesting things that make RevOps or sales ops or whatever we call ourselves different day in and day out.
I love that. All right, so it's almost like you can see the Q&A section, because this is something that Rick just asked, and I love it because you mentioned this at the very beginning, to like between RevOps and sales ops. So this is a common answer or a common question. So we'll segue into some Q&A. Please, for everyone on, drop some questions in. That's exactly what we're here to do, is help the community kind of solve some problems, and the best way to do it is by asking questions. But fun question, man. What's the difference between sales ops and RevOps?
So there's two answers here, right? One is your job title, right? You're called sales ops, but probably in reality you're actually doing RevOps. So let's just think about when the funnel, when is a prospect or a lead firmly in the hands of marketing, top of funnel, and then at what point does it exit that marketing funnel and go into sales? A hand raise and it's now ready for a sales conversation. And to me, a sales development rep, I'm classically from the school where I believe the SDRs are in sales. They may report to marketing, but in reality, a lot of their tactics, they're really the decision point they're trying to inflect from the prospect is really far down the funnel, right? And for me, marketing is at the point of awareness and consideration to the intent where they hand raise and they move into sales. So sales operations begins and ends with at the point at which a prospect is ready to talk to a salesperson, right? Whatever the job title is. And then it exits as soon as it starts going into customer experience or loyalty or implementation along that part of the customer journey. But let's be fair. There are a lot of folks here who are probably sales operations titles that are really configuring things in Marketo and Pardot and launching campaigns. They may even be uploading lists for field marketing. Although we're probably all inside calling on Zoom these days. And so, at the end of the day, you probably have 90% of your role sales ops and then 10% in RevOps. In my opinion, that tilts towards calling you RevOps. But in my view, RevOps is the entire journey, really thinking about the buyer throughout from the time they become aware that, hey, I need to fix something. And I'm seriously considering options and I'm researching, and I just found Sonar and thinking about How do I fix this? Do I build or do I buy it? Hey, I really want to start talking to someone in sales. This looks great. Let's talk about implementation. How do I get started with this? And then how do I tell all my friends and family to use it? To me, it's, that's RevOps all the way through the entire journey.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the best question, and I love it because it's so loaded. Let's just call it. It's a loaded question because we're seeing such a high trend of it, right? Like we see I think there was a report on LinkedIn, RevOps titles increased 400% year over year, which does not surprise me in the least. I think there are many differences, like you pointed out. I think the one thing that I would do the same way you just suggested, Jeff, watch how you're impacting the customer journey, because if you're only supporting that open gate and close gate in the sales cycle of it, you're in sales ops. If you're working through marketing side and you're making a lot of configuration changes and strategic decisions from a Marketo or Pardot or Elico, whatever you're working on, all the way down to the gain sites, the churn zeros, if you're working in the customer success side, if you're working with finance and you are in the NetSuite world or whatever it is, you're on the ERP side, one, bless you, because that's not easy. But two, I would consider yourself very much RevOps, because you are in charge of watching that revenue journey. I think, again, I've said this candidly to some of our customers, some of our advisors, some of our investors. I think the market is still figuring it out. I think we're still trying to figure out where we decide what that title looks like, why we have it that way. So it's I think it's going to continue to evolve. But I think if there's anything that you take away from it, if you're supporting more than one segment of the business, there's a good chance you're in the RevOps space and you're watching that revenue come through. If somebody asks you what's our retention rate, you're going to be more on the RevOps side than just the sales ops side. So I love that. I told Jeff before we started that I had a couple surprises for him. Only I know that he's a huge, huge baseball fan and a big Dodgers fan, being in LA. So I'd be remiss if I didn't tell him that baseball season's right around the corner, and we wear here our branded Sonar Atlanta hats. That you'll have one in the mail. Oh God, he's going to get his Dodgers hat. I know it. I knew it.
All right.
There we go. Of course, he's got the one that's
point this out.
We have one of those from like the 90s, I think. So here we are. But it's like, man, if I can ever take a dig at Jeff in baseball, and baseball's right around the corner, it's definitely going to be today. So we're going to be sending you some Atlanta Sonar gear, so you can at least rock the A while you're out in LA. But
oh man, you kidding me?
I knew you had it right there. It was not rehearsed, by the way, everybody. He just keeps his LA hat right by him all the time. But I will say, the other thing that we always do inside of all this, I'm going to keep my hat on because it's going to be messing up my hair like crazy. We always like do a couple of rapid fire things. So last couple of minutes. And again, if anybody has any other quick questions, drop them in. We can also answer them offline in WizOps. But rapid fire questions, going to toss them out. Oh man, Yankees, Rick. Ugh, sorry. Sorry, I'm not sorry. Nobody's that big a Yankee fan. What has your interest peaked right now on Netflix or on any streaming thing? What are you watching these days?
Oh man, let's see. The wife has been watching a lot of like Star Wars, Clone Wars. So I've like through osmosis been watching a lot of that. I'm actually a huge nerd around ancient history. I just finished, was it Barbarians on Netflix?
Yeah.
Thought that was incredibly interesting on the fact that no one knows what Latin actually sounds like because the accents and the way it's pronounced is gone. So I thought that was really interesting. That was really cool.
Love it. I love it. By osmosis, the same way. By default, we've been watching a lot of Below Deck. I think we're all in like a traveling. My wife loves Below Deck, so I watch that by osmosis, and I will say I've become a fan of it now as well. But I do like to think that we all watch whatever's just in the background of us, so I can probably name every character now on that. So I love it. Last question for you, because I know we're getting close to the top of time. We do this with a lot of our guests, and I'm going to do it with you today too. So as a Jeff, when you think back in your operations career, what advice would you give yourself, and obviously the rest of the folks that are here on our show today? What advice would you give them as they're growing their operations career? If you were to rewind the clock and give yourself some of that advice.
If you're a team of one, take a vacation. And the really important thing about that is think about your career as something that you own and that you're not a passenger to, and that you're in the driver's seat. I can tell you that I thought I could solve everything as a team of one for a very, very long time. And I should have asked to build a team earlier, but I just didn't know how, right? And part of the thing is the only way to scale the impact of what RevOps could be is that you're stronger as a team. And so, really advocate for what that might look like, not just for you personally, but for what the company needs. And if you're in the best position to take a leadership role and you're willing to be courageous and step up, do so. But first, take a break. Everyone needs a bit of an opportunity to get outside themselves and then jump back in the saddle.
Oh my gosh, take a vacation. My wife yells at me all the time because I don't take nearly enough time off. But it's so true. You do take a couple of those days, even if it's a day, even if it's a staycation. Right now, I think a lot of folks are staying at home, but take some time to catch your breath. And the thing that you'll find so quickly when you get back from that, you are 100% more efficient, and your mind is more clear. You're thinking about problems in a whole new light. So completely agree. And I think you mentioned this to a certain degree. It's, if you want that leadership position, be humble enough to ask for it, but also go prove that that you're the right person for it. You are in the driver's seat. You're a team of one right now. We've all been there. I was there and started as a team of one and built teams out from it. But you have a lot to prove to the business that you're the right person. And the nice thing is, you've got folks like Jeff, you got a community like RevOps to ask questions of and really figure out how to make that journey your own. But yeah, you're spot on, man. I love it. I know we're about 2 minutes over time. Time flies when you're having fun. But Jeff, I can't thank you enough for jumping in, man. I know the community loves it. I know I learned a lot today, so hope everybody else did. And don't worry, you'll be getting your Atlanta hat in the mail pretty soon. So
Awesome. We pull down the flag.
awesome.
Level up.
There you go. Hit the flag. Love it. Everybody have a phenomenal Thursday and the great rest of the week. Again, if you saw this, found it on LinkedIn, and you're not part of WizOps, please reach out to us, jump in the community. It's a great place to talk to Jeff, myself, and we can all collaborate together. But hope everybody has a great Thursday afternoon. Jeff, thanks again. We'll talk soon. Take care, everyone. See ya. Go Braves. Right, Jeff? Say go Braves.
Dude, man, you caught me off guard there. That was awesome.
I love it. See you guys.
Smile on my face.